Oh, hey, look, it's Furality. I hope some of you have already checked out some of the panels in the stream, Club Fin and whatever. I've checked them out already, and I, I've loved some of them already. Key Otter's stream was a highlight for me. So, without any further ado, welcome to Udon Crash Course for Beginners. I am akalink. I am a professional coder. I'm not super experienced. I actually started out as a musician. That's what I studied, and I became a coder. So if you feel like, oh, I can't really do this. I have an art background. It's not really for me. Believe me, anyone can code. Not every type of code is for everyone. There's plenty of fantastic coders, and they'll use the Udon graphs. I'm just teaching you Udon as if UdonSharp, which will be using C#. I like writing with code, like actual code personally. So that's what I'm gonna teach you. I don't really get graphs that well. People who don't get code but love graphs. I'm the opposite. So we're gonna go over it. If you don't know what Udon is the scripting language of making worlds within VR chat. There are many ways to do it. I already mentioned graphs. We're here for UdonSharp. There's also sign triggers. And you can, if you're curious about those, I suggest just doing a simple Google search. You will be able to find it just by searching sign triggers, UdonSharp. In fact, if you want UdonSharp, there's two ways to get it. So going here, you can just Google UdonSharp and it'll take you to Merlin's, to his repository. You just go here and download the most recent Unity package. In the near future, we currently have the Creator Companion beta. Once that goes out of beta, you'll no longer do it this way. You'll be getting UdonSharp directly from the Creator Companion. It's a component that's already one of like the community made ones. So you can just import it that way. It'll include a new version of UdonSharp called 1.0. So with that, I'm actually going to show you how to make the Udon scripts. I already have it built directly. I already have it installed directly into Unity. So I have imported UdonSharp. I have imported I have my own editor scripts, which I will use briefly, but they're not necessary. I also have a demo scene. You don't really have to take notes. Everything that I'm going to write today is going to be on my personal GitHub for you to take and look at whenever you want. But if you want to, that's fine. So to make a UdonSharp script, we're going to start with create up here, and we make a UdonSharp script. This will be in there. So I'm going to call this one the learning coding. It's not really a great name. Actually, I should make that better named. Learn coding. So UdonSharp uses C# for you to code. Okay, cool. It made a little error, but we can just clear that error. That's not what I want, but that's fine. I'm going to be writing this in Visual Studio Code, which is the thing I need to talk to everyone about. So here's our demo scene. Here's our learn coding C# asset that will be used, and it will compile down into the assembly that is Udon. That's all Udon is. It's assembly language code that's compiled from these languages like this. That's why we can have stuff like UdonSharp and things like sign triggers and Udon graphs. It all compiles down into assembly language. If you don't know what assembly language is, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. So this is generated by default. It includes the libraries, which is what these are, using libraries. So it's using the UdonSharp library, using the Unity Engine library, the SDK library, in the regular Udon library. So it'll use that, and it'll make things easier for us. So I'm using Visual Studio Code to write my code. I normally use JetBrains Rider. If you're just starting out, you can use the built-in you can use the IDE, which stands for independent, or I really can name. It's the development environment. It's the development environment that makes it easier to write code. It'll help you, and I'll show you why when I start actually writing code. So it allows you to, it's a place to write code. You can totally use Visual Studio that comes with your with Unity by default, but I do highly recommend looking into JetBrains Writer. It's my preferred IDE of choice. It makes things so much easier for me. So the first thing we're going to talk about is variables. It's one of the fundamentals of coding. Variables are, in essence, they are capsules of data. This data can be manipulated, which you want to do. It can also represent objects, which I'll also explain what they are. So I'll just start coding it. So our primitives, we'll start with our bool type, and it already suggested bool, and I'll call that, hey, I just use what it suggests. So is coding is false. And then we can have is coding is true. And that's all that a bool can exist as. True and false. There are certain expressions that will result in a bool. They won't exist as usually as a variable, but they'll result in true or false. And then we have the int. I'll call it simple number. And that can equal your numbers such as 1, 2, 3, 4, -1. There's also bigger and smaller versions of this, such as the byte, which is smaller, and the long, which is the big version. But most cases you use an int. There's also a char, which is a ASCII character. So I'm going to call it, simple char, and I can make this A. You see it has the single quotes around it. That means it's a char. Its symbol is a char. So A, let's do a chevron, maybe a percent sign. That can be your char. And then there's a float. I'm going to do a simple float, and it's I'm going to not call this simple. I'm going to call this fraction number. And you can see that they can exist as a fraction. These are primitive variables. They're simple. They don't carry anything fancy. They'll exist in the memory of your machine with the rest of the blocks of code. Next, then there's another type of variable. I actually didn't say it. All these have a typing that's strict, so they can only take this type of data unless you specify don't take that type of data, manipulate it to mean something else. So there's after that we're going to start evolving into reference variables. So the first one is going to be a string. Actually, I call it a string, or I call it simple string. And that's going to be actually a bunch of chars strung together. So yeah, hello world will be fine. It'll exist with double quotes this time. So what makes this different is these just exist in the moment, and they'll be taken out of your computer's memory when you're finished a block of code. Or it'll stay in memory if they're in this particular part of your block of code, because this is in the global scope right now, which I'll explain a little bit more in a bit. The simple string will exist instead in the heap in its own special string pool of the heap, but it'll exist in the heap, which is this section of your computer's memory, which is for objects. Objects are these complicated coding things. It's hard to explain, but as we go on, you'll understand objects a lot more. So we're in Unity, and we have the built-in Unity stuff, so we can build into more complex objects, which when I declare this will make a lot of sense. So we'll have a game object, and then it'll be null in this case. That's the big thing between object. These will have a default value, so this bool, if I don't assign it anything, it'll be false. this int, if it doesn't assign anything, if I don't assign anything, it'll be 0. And this char, it's all the way down. There's a default value, but then we get to the string. It doesn't have a default value. It does have a default value, but doesn't. You may think, oh, it's probably just empty. Like we gave it this name. Now it's empty. No, we're not going to do that. I'm just going to undo that. It's going to be null by default. So we have ways to actually assign it. So moving down, we have a built-in, it came with a method. So we have variables and then we have methods. The methods are essentially where your logic will be, your blocks of code. So I start writing this and then I can call isCoding and I can set it to false. And I can say simple number, I'm going to set it to 0. So when we start Unity, when we start our instance, we go in there, this script will run, well, we'll have to assign it to an object, but it will run and it'll start with isCoding is true, but once it actually starts running, isCoding will become false and simple number will become false. Of course, there's no real reason to do that. If we can assign it here, there's no reason to assign it here. But we can do methods that we're still using built-in methods here, but we can do a public override interact. And this is actually a built-in VRChat method. So I can set isCoding equals false in this case. I'm going to delete these. I did a typo here, so it's not going to work. And I can do simple string equals I have been clicked. And then I always need to do the semicolon to say I'm done. And I'm going to do a thing that's really good to do. I'm going to log it. So I'm going to do I think it's debug.log. And I'm going to put in simple string as my log. And I should save it. And I think no, I didn't spell that right. Debug log. And I can go into Unity now. Not a valid form of item. I do have a typo somewhere in that. So I can go. I'm going to copy. Yeah, okay. I forgot to put the void. I'll explain what void is in a second. After this. So this is a built-in Udon VRChat method. And what it's going to allow us to do is it allows us to click on the object if it has a collider, and it'll run the code that's in here. So go to here, game object. I know, okay. Okay, so that is another typo. So we did game object. I made a typo. This should be capital G, capital O. This happens all the time when you're coding. You realize you made a typo and it has a mistake. But thankfully, Unity's telling us, oh, there's a problem there. Okay. Debug doesn't contain definition for log. I think it's lowercase. I do a lot of JavaScript at work, so it's like totally forget. I like capital C console log. It's the same idea. Okay. Is it capital? I'm totally wasting my time now. This is, if I don't get it in the next minute, then I'm going to have to figure out what's going on. Okay, so it worked. Is this, and then I'm going to just I have this scene, so I'm just going to create a quad we can stand on. Not a quad, a plane. And then I have in this, I'm just can generate a world prefab. I have an editor script. And then I'm going to create a cube. And I'm going to add the Udon behavior. And then I'm going to add the Udon behavior we just worked on. And then I have signed emu in this project, so I should be able to just run the emulation. Nope, I fell through the floor. Of course. It's probably too high. Yeah, it's too high. And not that one. This is too high. Okay. Little by little, you figure it out. Okay, here we go. So we go into my console. I can click. And it says, I have been clicked. Cool. So that works. Took us a second. Oh, we got it. So it's passing in the value which contains this. I can then concatenate this, and I'm going to include a space, concatenate. I'm just going to add this to a long thing. I want to add simple number. Oh yeah, it's going to do that. It's going to add all these, what GitHub Copilot suggested for me. That's why it's suggesting things. So when we go back into Unity, all these will be shown in our log. I'm just going to clear it and go into play mode. And then shows a lot of details, most of them regarding SignEmu. So it said, I have been clicked, -1, percentage shine 1.5. So that's the value of all those. In one of the scripts we'll make later, we're going to use string. We're going to use other things that are built into Unity. So I'm going to then talk about methods. I think that's what I want to talk about. So I'm going to make a custom method. I'm going to use this void type. So I'm going to make a private void my method. A method is just a block of code. With the built-in ones, it'll run when a certain thing happens, but you can do custom ones. So I do my method, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these values and put them in here. This allows you to organize things. So I'm going to call my method. I need to make sure I do the parentheses. That's a method thing. I can save. And we're going to get the exact same. It's going to act the exact same way as it did before. So I can go in, and it has to compile. That's why it takes so long. And it'll play. I can hit it. Of course, it's now not working. What did I do? called my method with the interact. That should work. It honestly should work, but I don't know why it didn't work just now. That actually makes no sense to me. Okay, it now worked that time. So it's just that one time. It worked. I can do it again. You can see this went to a 2, so it did multiple times. So there's methods that you make custom, and there's methods that you make that already exist. And I'll use both in our demos that are have some fairly practical demos for us. So an important thing to know is this is a return type, this void. The void means typically there's no return type, but you know how we had bool and int and char and float and string before? You can use these in the return type. So I can have not in this one, but in this one I can have a bool, and I need to return a value. I'm going to return is coding because it's a bool value, but I can also say true. And actually it'd be good if I do it like this, is coding equals my method, it will call this, run all of this, return true, and now this will become true. Coding is very modular, and there's just various ways to do things. So I'm going to make another method. No, actually, I'm going to do that a little bit later. So I talked about return types. So we have return types. I'm just going to go over that briefly. Most times you're going to be using void. But I need to talk about access modifiers. So you notice this is public. This one is private. This one cannot, because it's private, cannot be called from any outside Unity thing. No UI buttons, no whatever. Nothing can be called from it. Only itself can call this method that I've set up. And the same case is with variables. These are the instance variables. Any new variables we made in our blocks and our methods are going to be local variables. Those local variables will only exist within themselves. So I can say this one is a bool of my local bool, and that will equal true. And I'm going to put a note here. I can put notes. I am a local variable. Yeah. GitHub. I'll be destroyed after the method is called. And you can see here, if I type my local, it won't even suggest it to me because it doesn't exist. But if I do local variable equals false, well, it's not going to give me a red squiggly, but normally or actually my local bool is what the name was. My bad. My local bool equals false. If I save it, let Unity try to compile it, Unity will not like it. Yep. The local bool does not exist in the current context. So yeah, it gets destroyed. So we can remove that. And instead of this true, I'm going to do my local bool. So that's private. Up here, anything we put up here without any, I clicked on something, anything we put up here, specifically in this top section, will be an instance variable, and it will inherently be private. That's not the case with the local variables. So I'm going to say needs, it's like will have a access modifier or a private unless specified. Well, actually it's default. I should say of default. So what we actually want is we want to actually name these. So I'm going to name all these privates for this one. This one's going to be public pool. This one's going to be private and private, private and private. And I'm not going to show because I do only have like 25 minutes and I haven't even gotten any really example stuff. So I'm going to quickly go over the, like you should, yeah, I'm going to talk about flow. This is a very short amount of time to cover like coding. Like you really can't. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a if statement. These are the type of things where if you do them, they will equal a Boolean value of true or false. So I'm going to say, is coding equals true? And then I'm going to say, I am coding, I am not coding. And I'm going to actually comment this out because we're not going to call this now. And now, because we made this public, we can adjust what its value is in Unity. And we can actually do this in play mode too. All this just to get to a trigger. Trust me. After this, I have already written down some examples we'll go through. And I'll give you actual practical things you can just steal and use. So I'm going to clear this. I'm going to click this. So I am coding. And then this cube, I'm going to toggle that off and do it again. I am not coding. So you can just change it. I am coding is now 2. I am not coding is now 2. So that's good. So I'm going to move on, actually do practical examples. I'm going to do just a simple object toggle now. So I'll do the same thing as before, do a simple toggle. Save. And I'll be able to go through this quickly because I already have it. So I can go back into VS Code and simple toggle here. I'm actually going to start out with something. You don't have to do this, but it's highly recommended, is to make a namespace. So I do a namespace. I'm going to name it, Finn's script. And if you aren't familiar, Finn is the mascot of Furality. He's writing Udon now. I'm going to just tab this over, the tabbings make it easier to read. So I'm going to need a public game object. I'm going to name it object to toggle because I want to know what it is. And then we're going to, I'm actually going to make this a little bit fancier than a simple toggle by clicking it. So I'm going to be a public interactable. And then it will be, it's going to be a public bool of interactable, or can be interacted. I don't need the start, but I do need the public override void interact. And then I will leave that blank for now. Okay, so that'll be blank. And I'm actually going to use the custom method thing that I showed earlier. So I'll do a private void toggle object. And this is going to call toggle object. We could write all if in this, but I don't want interact to be the only way. I actually want to do I want to have two ways. Oh, actually, I do need to start. So I will go down here and I'll do the private void start. And then I'll do, there's a built-in thing in Udon called disable interactive. And it will be the opposite of interactable. It's because we want this to be true. We want to be able to interact with it using interact. This will be true, but having it true will make it disable. So we do the opposite. So this is actually a negation. When you do a exclamation point, it does the opposite, which I will show in this toggle object script because we haven't actually toggled the object yet. So, GitHub Action suggests it. So object to toggle will then use the dot operator. That's part of objects. If they have them, they'll be. If you have public, you can access them with the dot operator outside of them, of those objects. So it'll access set active. It's a method that's built into objects, and then we can also use the method that gets whether it's enabled or not. And if it's enabled, we want to do the opposite of it. So we use negation again. Not there, but here in the front. So this will be not true or not false. So if it's active, it will now be set to false. And if it's not active, which is false, it will now be true, which is active. Hopefully that makes sense. You'll see it in action. So I mentioned I wanted one more way. I'm also going to do it with a player trigger. So override void, we need on player trigger enter. And this is going to allow us to, so I'm going to do some checks. So I'm going to do networking dot local player equals double equals is the equality check. And it's not interactable. There's some stuff in there and we can call that. So that's got messy, but so just explain, when the player enters the collider and it's set to interact, it passes in the player. Oh, let's see. Actually, that's not the right thing. So let's copy it. It's actually player API. So ERC player API. So it's just actually like even yourself is an object within the Unity scene. So pass in the object, it will check if you, the local player, is the same person using equality, and they'll do an and to make sure that both these are true, that it's not interactable, and then I'll call toggle object. And with all of that, we should be able to do everything properly. So we'll go back into Unity now. And I'm going to set up something simple. I made a prefab for a door that we'll use. So where's the world component? It's right there. I'll move this. I'll reset this component to be the simple toggle. It will be interactable. I'll drag in our door. We want to go through the door. And I'll make the hinge. I'll put it in this slot. So you see that it says none. Because it's none, it is, like I mentioned earlier, null. It's going to be null. The problem with that type of situation is in Udon, if something is null, it'll crash your Udon program. So I'll add a little thing to make sure that it doesn't crash. So you can't go through that. Should be able to, or, oh, interactable is true. Oh, I didn't set this to true. Okay, I wanted the default to be true so you can click on it, but there's a couple things that we also didn't make the collider to be trigger. So go in here. I'll just make that trigger preemptively. Well, we'll just do this backwards. Set it to be interactable. Oh, it's because I saved earlier and it saved that particular. Okay, so now it does it. Okay. So that's just a simple turns the object on and off. It's only local. Okay. So I'm going to reset this again because I'm going to be a little bit fancier. We're going to now do a sync toggle. Not in here, but in here. UdonSharp script, and I'm going to say sync toggle. So this is going to run for everyone. This is going to be a lot more complicated. So with only I'm going to try and get this done as quickly as possible so you all can ask questions. I'll try my best to answer. Oh, I shouldn't double click it. It's going to open up Writer now. Okay, so this is my sync toggle. I'm just going to close Writer. So sync toggle, we're going to include, well, actually, I need the namespace again. Namespaces prevent having collisions in names. So this is going to be fin script. Trying to be fast by using GitHub Copilot, which has suggestions, but it seems to be, it has bad suggestion times. So to make a variable synced, we're going to add Udon synced. And then I'll do the parentheses, and I'll do a private bool of state. State as in what it currently is. The Udon synced variable can only be controlled by what is called the owner of the object, which we will make sure is not a problem. So we'll do a public animator because we're going to animate this to anim. I already made the animation. I was hoping to show it, but I don't think I really can. Do a public string of anim name. Okay, then I'm going to do a public override void interact. And then I'm going to leave that blank. And then I'm going to make a custom. It's public because we're going to call it with a network event, void set bool. And I mentioned, you probably don't want to take notes because I'm going to do something wordy now. So I'm going to do I'm actually going to copy most of this. Send custom network event. And this is the thing where I expect just go. Yeah, actually, GitHub did a good, GitHub Copilot did a good. So, but except for this. So it's Udon, VRC Udon common interfaces network event target all. So all players. If we want this name, you can normally just make this a string literal and it'll look for that name. But we're going to do a name of and then we can put in this. And if we change that name, we won't have a problem. Okay, so I just got my 10-minute warning. It's time for speed. So we're now going to check if networking.local player, we're going to do that local player check again. We're going to do is owner. And then we're going to do the game object, which is the built-in name for what we're currently on. And then we can put that in the block. We can change the state to opposite of itself. Not going to change the animator. We're going to do a built-in function called request serialization. That just means for all the other players, update the synced variable. And then we need another custom. Don't need that there. GitHub palette likes to make extra stuff. So I need a private void. I'm going to call update sync. And it's going to be called, it's going to be anim. In the animations, we're going to set the bool, we're going to do the anim name, and we're going to use state. So whatever this is at the moment, this will be this. We're also going to need to call update sync. We need one more thing. We need a public override void on deserialization. This is going to be the method that calls when you request serialization. So this will call for everyone except for the owner. It'll run, and then this will run update sync. I combine this logic for everyone. So this needs to call update sync as well. So just make sure that I'm not missing something. Okay, go into Unity. I'm going to assign the sync toggle. Oh, I have an error. Sync toggle error. Something expected. Oh, I know what it is. This doesn't have a parentheses. There we go. I think that will fix the problem. User type. Okay, cool. So this is already a animator. You have an animator here. You can drag that in. We need the animation name. So I'll go into here and grab the animator and the parameter name. For this object is open. And I can just copy and paste this. It'll be a string. So I can go and I can should be able to play this. I'm like fingers crossed that we don't have any problems. That's the problem. You always some little thing that just trips you up all the time. Don't feel discouraged when that happens. There we go. It's actually, I wanted to do this slightly different. I'm going to just copy this component, copy component. I'm going to put it on this knob here. I'm going to paste component as new. I'm just going to disable this cube. And this should be better. It's like I'm about to get my 5-minute warning. Oh, isn't working the first time. I think because, yeah, I know why. Because of my logic already has it. It already changes to what it's supposed to be. So that's fine. I know the problem. So, oh, I'm not logged in. I was logged in last night. I wanted to show it syncing and working, but if it asks, I might just go to questions. Yeah, actually, let's just go to questions. Let me go to the Furality Discord where you can ask the questions. I haven't been looking at there, so just give me a second to find the server. Okay, of course, as soon as I need to find it quickly, I can't find it. Okay, there we go. So in the so UdonSharp Crash Course, this is the place to ask the questions. And while I'm waiting for questions, I'm going to go ahead and go to GitHub here. I'm going to add this demo scene. It's not, I may have to figure out why it's not adding the scripts. I'll figure that out later. So, waiting for question. It's still not signing in. Okay, cool. I can go into Builder. I can go and I'm going to do 2. And then you'll see it. You'll see it change once it builds in game. I only have a few minutes. The funny thing is, when I'm sitting here, I actually have no idea how many people have joined. So for all I know, I could be teaching no one, but who knows how many people are in the chat. I'm not looking at that. I should look at it though. Okay. So here's a VR chat. Here's a VR chat. Come on. It gets really slow. Okay, cool. There's a couple me. There we go. And I can switch to the other one. I guess it's not working. Oh. Okay, actually. Now it is. It's just slow. So it is syncing. I can walk through. This person can walk through. So we have a sync door. So yeah, with that, we only have like 2 minutes left. So just, 2 minutes left. I just got the message for it. So with that, that is a very, very bare bones look at coding at Udon. Hopefully this gives you a head start. I'm going to get all the code up on GitHub so you can just steal it and work with it however you want. You can go and just search for akalink GitHub. So just akalink GitHub. And then that's me. Just go to my repositories, and then there's a Furality UdonSharp Crash Course, and all the scripts will be here. You can also go check out, well, there's stuff that is not VR chat related, but stuff like VR Divar, Jack of Hearts. There's a Git ignore for you. You can check out Udon Starter Kit. You can look at those and use them to your heart's content. So with that, I'm gonna wrap up this panel, so call it a day. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I hope that this was helpful, gets you started on writing your own code. I will wait for instructions of what I'm supposed to do from the Furality staff. So if they want me to cut the... Okay, yeah, say bye. I can say bye. Bye, everyone. And then